When the team is not doing well, we have to make it a fun experience. Yeah. And it's a tricky thing because everyone lives and dies by the games, right? So you don't want to, go too far where people, you annoy baseball operations or hockey operations, but you really, truly want to bring that person back because they said, man, we lost 5-1, but boy, we had a good time, right? Yeah. That's what it's about. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Daktronics Experience podcast. Today we're at Comerica Park, home of the Detroit Tigers, and we're here with Stan and Pete. Stan, can you give us a little history of your position and how you got to where you're at today?
Sure. So I've been with the Detroit Tigers since 2013. Prior to that, I was with the Detroit Pistons and Palace of Auburn Hills, and actually background was a lot in broadcast, and then kind of switched over to the in-house side toward the final couple of years there before coming over to the Tigers. For about 10 years, did a lot on the game presentation side, and then last year had the opportunity to shift over into a role with Illich Sports Entertainment that's really more strategic in our approach to broadcast operations, including everything we do on the in-house side from a production standpoint and the technology behind it, and of course probably what we'll talk about a lot here today, and that's the new video board we have here at the Comerica Park.
Yeah, it was. Were you always kind of into technology then too? Like even before all this, was that always the career path you wanted to be on?
Very much so. For me, it was always a kind of a producer's mindset. Previously it was in TV trucks for about 15 years. With the Detroit Pistons producing those broadcasts. But a technical background certainly helps in that area, and just continue to dive into it. Really got into editing over a number of years too as well. At this stage of my career, it just felt like a natural progression too, as much as I had gotten into it.
Nice. And Pete, maybe let's throw it over to you and see what your history is like and how you got to where you're at today.
Well, I started in the business in 1993 with the Florida Marlins when they first came to Florida. Been with them 10 teams now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't expect to go that way. I was with the Marlins for 8 years, and then I moved on to the Carolina Hurricanes, and I was with the Carolina Hurricanes for 11 years. I was with the Hurricanes, and I did Wolfpack basketball and football. And then I switched over to went back to Florida after my father passed away with the Florida Panthers. Was the Florida Panthers for about 4 years. Was there when Vinny Viola bought the team. And then I got an opportunity in Atlanta to open Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and it was the first of its kind. So wow. I was like, I gotta take that opportunity. So I went to Atlanta, and I worked with the Falcons and United. And I was there for 4.5 years. Went to the Super Bowl and lost the most dramatic Super Bowl loss ever.
We can gloss over that.
Yeah. But then we won the MLS Cup the next year. So
there you go.
It was kind of worth it. And then after that, I went out to help open SoFi Stadium with the LA Chargers.
Oh, wow.
And I was with the Chargers for 4 years, and then, kind of ran its course in football. And it's crazy for me because it was not enough games. And so then I came over here to Detroit so I could quadruple my games. So I oversee the Tigers and the Red Wings now here.
How long have you been in Detroit now?
A year, a full year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely. So that was a big part of it then? Were you looking for baseball? I mean, you made the joke about not enough games, but when you were out in for the Chargers, was that kind of what you were looking for in a career, like baseball? Or
no? It's a funny story actually. I didn't want to get into baseball again. Essentially, I left baseball because a funny story. My daughter was born, and we had a 14-game homestand. And for 2 weeks, I didn't see my daughter awake.
Oh, wow.
And then when I went to pick her up, she was shying away from me. And I said, I got to get out of baseball. So that was in the 90s, right? So baseball's changed a lot. So when this opportunity came to me, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do baseball again. And then the CMO at the time, Alexis, said to me, she goes, well, there's also an opportunity with the Red Wings, and I love hockey. And so I was like, oh, you had me at Red Wings. So I came in and we had some fun with the Tigers. And then I realized how much all the improvements in baseball and the pitch clock and how it just made it a more consumable game. And and then I realized my love of baseball, and it just blossomed back. And so it's the best of both worlds for me now.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
And then maybe a little bit, so then how do you two work together then when it comes time to get ready for these games? I can throw it over to you if you want to start.
Having Pete here has been a real boost to the organization. So, certainly the wealth of experience that he that he brings understanding where kind of the traps can be, as we plan something out, and the things that he's gone through, has been very helpful. On a game day basis, we work closely together, and just, overall, the tech approach that we take to, each game, make sure we have the right personnel in place. That's a big responsibility of mine. Planning from everything from a tech standpoint, and not making it just a day of game ask, but looking at it, as a whole season. And I think, Pete's been real instrumental in that.
Yeah, and I would say that working with Stan's been a true treat. He's got one of the best humors. That he's really sharp. I always say my humor is like a nuclear bomb. It's always just going. And Stan's like a sniper. He just hits those funny jokes. So he does balance me out really well too, because I'm always going like this, and he's more down the line and focus. And it really is a nice combination.
I feel like at the end of this podcast, people are gonna where were any of the jokes that Pete said Stan was going to tell? All I can say is they're all going to be edited out. I think it's just so understand that at the end.
Nice. So you say you kind of balance each other out pretty well, and you're kind of involved in two venues. How does that work with Little Caesars Arena and with Comerica Park?
Well, it's a challenge, especially if the teams are successful, right? Like we look at what the Florida Panthers, right? And just a couple of weeks ago that ended, and we were halfway through the baseball season. So sometimes they overlap, things like that, and balancing two major league franchises and making sure that the show is different and the feel is different and the vibe is different. For me, I always say there's two schools of thought that we live in, right? So it's excitement and fun, right? And in baseball, you live in fun because the game is slower, and you dabble in excitement, right? Bases loaded, all that stuff. Hockey is the opposite. You live in excitement because the game is so fast, so that when you take a break, you have some fun. He's like, whew, got to take a break. So and he could talk the operations, because the operations also a juggling act.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it is interesting. I spent the first 17 years or so of my professional career in an arena, and so really got to know just the ins and outs of being in an arena, and then shifted over here to Comerica Park, for a 10-year stretch where it was just all baseball, and kind of got away from the arena side, and now combining both of them. So I had to relearn their arena aspect a little bit. The lack of rainouts, a huge plus definitely on the arena side. But no, just there are different rhythms associated with it. The sports are very different. You can't take a one-size-fits-all approach to it. The audiences, are different, definitely. And I go back to the rhythm of the game, and I think Pete touched on that. Yeah, the way it feels, hockey and basketball. We have some oversight and a partnership with the Detroit Pistons as well too on the production side. It's a very different feel. And I guess just sort of the intensity of what you're trying to capture in an enclosed environment. And the displays obviously play a big role in that. The lights out moments, all these things that you can't rely upon in baseball. And so in baseball, you find yourself, building towards these moments, taking a little bit more of a long game approach on things, setting up, the features that you want to do, throughout the season. There's a little bit of a slower pace to it, but I think one of the things that Pete's definitely brought in the last year is we've ratcheted up the big moments that we feel in the park. Whether it's combining music with what's happening on the field and sensing those moments and rising to the occasion from a game presentation standpoint.
That definitely happened last night. The dabbling in excitement, and you even mentioning the lights not being able to control it, unless it's like a night game, right? Because we were fortunate to come last night and watch the game. Really close one at the end, but when it was really close in the ninth, all the lights went off, right? The video boards, all the lights, and the crowd just started going nuts because I think there's a pitcher change. And they're getting ready to come out. So, I mean, that was definitely one of those moments, too, where it's like, oh, wow. This is, everyone's getting pumped up here. And it felt almost like an arena setting for that little bit.
Absolutely, would agree. And a big addition to the ballpark, and it was really funny, the first time that we actually activated the lights last year, we didn't have a chance early in the season to play a lot of day games. Don't have the right moment. So we've gone probably, I can't even really remember the exact date, but it was later on in April when we finally had a night game and a walk-off home run. And prior to that point, other than kind of twinkling the lights from time to time where people didn't really even notice it because it was happening during the day, it was the first time we had a big lights out moment, walk-off home run activated, and it was like everybody reaction to the press box and in the stands was like all of a sudden like an environment that one way for 25 years has now come to life in a completely different way, and it was just
I can tell you too.
moment.
What the crazy part too is like operationally, it's not as complex as you think because it's still production, right? But thematically and programming, it couldn't have polar opposite sports. You have hockey, which you control the entire environment. You control the lights. You can create an atmosphere just by shutting the lights off, right?
Yes.
And then the game is so intense and so fast. And then baseball is more of a thinking man's game, more complex, right? More slow. So and again, you control the environment in the arena, your lights, everything, and you just can immediate have energy. In baseball, especially where we play here in Michigan, so far west in the Eastern time zone that it doesn't get dark until 9 o'clock sometimes. Right? So it's difficult. It's a different approach, and it's a different feel too. It's again, the baseball is it's slower, and you could have more fun in baseball. Like in baseball, I always say the big difference between like baseball, hockey, and football. Like, hockey is super fast sport. I think the hardest sport to call is football because you got to make a decision every 15, 20 seconds. But hockey's right there at second, right? Because it's super fast. You got to know the rules. You got to be in the moment, and it's like the players. You got to hop the boards and keep going, right? So that's fun. Where baseball is just a little bit slower, right, and more methodical. So you have more time, and that's really builds camaraderie in baseball too. So it's a fun juxtaposition between the two teams, and I couldn't love it anymore.
Sounds like it keeps you on your toes there too. And then of course you got something brand new in the ballpark this year, a huge new video board, second largest in all of baseball. Maybe what went into the decision of that display and the size and shape of it?
Yeah, it started a couple of years ago, the planning process of it. We knew, just simply from a lifespan standpoint, the previous board had been installed in 2012. We were ready, for a replacement at the very least, right? But as an organization, we didn't want to simply replace it. We wanted to, upgrade and go bigger and better. We did take a look at analysis of possibly moving the board, different locations, went through all of those steps. We realized the right fit for us, and this is really just kind of a testament of what kind of value as an organization, when the reason the ballpark is built the way it is because the skyline is such an important part of the fan experience. And so we wanted to keep the board with it where it was to continue to maximize the fans' view of the skyline. And so with that in mind, we then just took a look at the structure and how to maximize the shape of it. And right away, you apparently, on the sides, you have the fixed signage, you have fixed signage on top, you got fixed signage below it. What if we went all LED in that shape? And I think the original thinking was, okay, you have kind of an upper board and a lower board, and Pete and the crew continue to program it that way. And then when it really comes to life is when you bring both boards together and program it as a single canvas. And so going from the size, it's a big jump for us. I still find myself surprised. Like the other day, I was walking over from the arena, and it was the evening, and I could see the scoreboard kind of peeking over the bushes from the angle that I was at as I'm walking over, and I just reminded myself that was not visible last year. I could not see the scoreboard from that angle, and I find that happening quite a bit still, where I'm still surprised that I'm able to see the scoreboard from outside the ballpark.
Yeah. And we'll give the stats on that really quick. The new display is 67 feet high by 185 feet wide. That's just the upper section. The lower section is 35 feet high by 96 feet wide for a total of about 15,000 square feet, 14.1 million pixels. Sounds like it's a lot for you to play with there on game day with programming. So can you take us into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's the second largest board in Major League Baseball. But for me, it's not as big as SoFi or Atlanta. But it gives it a different challenge, right? So what's unique about this is trying to program it in a baseball mindset, right? How do you deliver stats? How do you deliver it in an environment that's appealing to the common fan, but also the baseball fan? I think like last year, our GIP, our game in progress, was a little too busy, too much numbers, and it just felt like a math test. So we really had a thoughtful approach to how we were going to design for this year. We sat down with a partner that had worked with Daktronics and done the things with I think it was Philadelphia and San Diego, and we looked at a lot of cool presentations, and I wanted to create something unique to Detroit. So we kind of created, the way I described it to our partner was, I want to create a gaming environment. so you could kind of move around in the gaming environment. So it becomes a real-time environment of Detroit, and it's expandable for us. So it was a process, but again, this board is so appealing, and it's just so big, and the wow factors are just so you can't miss yourself, you can't miss it, and you can see the impact it's already had on the energy in the ballpark.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so when the project first started, then kind of when were your involvements? And we can start with you. Is you see the shape and everything of it, and then it's like, okay, once that gets finalized, now you start to figure out how to like get the control system and everything needed for it, or how does that?
Correct. Yeah. So there was a real research phase that happened as well, and so I should definitely bring into the conversation Alex Lavachis, who's our director of game presentation here. He and I took several trips to ballparks last year, and on a fact-finding mission, basically early in the season, and to lay eyes on on various manufacturers of video boards. Not all Daktronics, but we were challenged to let's
see what's out
let's
there.
go wide. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We had a very good relationship with Daktronics going into it, but we did our due diligence and found some very credible products to consider. In the end, we were very impressed with the board that we saw in Minnesota. The Minnesota Twins had just put in a recent Daktronics installation. Got to see it on the night of a T-Pain post-game concert, so maybe that has some influence too. Also, on the way T-Pain looked up on that board, was great. But overall, just terrific, aesthetics about it, look fantastic from any angle, and so we were encouraged by the steps that Daktronics had taken since we last put in a Daktronics board in 2012. So that was a big part of the process, which is simply going and visiting other teams who had done recent installs and making it having that contribute to our decision.
And then Pete, maybe over to you then. We kind of mentioned, is it you get the canvas essentially, and then once you do, I think we've heard this many times. It was even when we were at the Patriots, and they said they watched the board get built, right? The producers and the operators, and they're just waiting for that moment for them to say, all right, now you can play with it, turn it on, and test content. Was that kind of how you were? I mean, you're plotting it out obviously ahead of time, but then waiting for the board to get finished so you could start playing with it?
I think it was twofold for me, really, because I was brought into the process of designing the board, or in that part, because of my past experience at SoFi Atlanta. It was like my 8th board, but
that's my 8th board. That's good.
But it was informative for me though, because again, having those other canvases like in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is also a Daktronics board, and really kind of trying to figure out things that didn't exist at the time,
Mm-hmm.
really kind of made my mind muscle grow, right?
Okay.
So you start to think outside of your box, like literally a box. That's what scoreboards were, and now they're whatever you can think of. So you really got to be, and that's the fun part. That's the challenge, and that's the stuff that I truly love. Is like trying to think of how do we maximize this board for the wow factors, right, and the magic moments, and then how do we make it useful, right? So like for instance, when I was in Atlanta, it's a round board, right? That you guys are well aware of it.
Yep.
So one of the executives had the idea of having the board rotate because it would be cool to just rotate. And I go, yeah, it's a cool idea. I said, but what happens when it's a football game and I look up and it's 2nd and 7, and then I want to, I see the play, and then I want to look back up, and I can't find
Where
the
did
down
it
and
go?
distance. Now it's not a good fan experience. Now I'm aggravated. I'm like, this is a stupid thing, right? So you really got to think of everything. You got to think of the wow factors for just the fan going, holy cow, this is the first time I've been here, to the football fan going, I want to know the football stats and all that other stuff. So it's a different contemplative look. And then when you go to baseball, it's even more stats and even more things that it's like an eye chart sometimes. It's like, what is WAR? What is this? So you really got to make sure that you have an offering for everybody, but you don't want to make it too complex for the casual fan, but you want to give those moments of complexity. So it was a challenge, but it's a fun challenge, and it's something that we always look forward to.
Yeah, and that's what they've done. I mean, really, there's the practical aspect, to baseball, where that display of statistics, and then but I think what Pete, Alex, and also Travis Childress, who's our producer, game day producer too, have done especially good job. It's just focusing on the entertainment value, not just simply it's not just the game in progress. It's not just what we put up when the batter is up and we can't have anything moving. We're going to move in, we're going to move out of it, we're going to take advantage of every moment that we have, and they've done a fantastic job of that. And because of the sheer size of the board, it dominates kind of the environment it hasn't previously, and so it's really been fantastic.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like Stan mentioned, Alex and Travis, and we have a third now this year, Kenzie Kassar. But the reason why I bring them up is because of the passion of a baseball employee or a producer in baseball is a deep set thing, because you do so many games and so many, there's a camaraderie to it. And these guys were like chomping at the bit as soon as they saw this, like the imagination and the ideation came out, and it was so much fun to kind of, see it come to life, And we're only just scratching the surface.
Yeah,
We've only just begun.
Just year one.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of in a T shape with that larger upper section and that smaller section. Was that obviously maybe a little intentional with the name of the team, or what was the thought behind that with the different signage that had existed there before?
Well, I think, and Stan could talk a little bit more about it, but from my perspective, if you look at it, I mean, there's some complexity to this boards or this stadium, which to me, again, it's one of the pantheons of baseball. All the ornate tigers and all this is, if you're a baseball fan, this is a mecca. So that's one of those things. But the other part to this is that it's got sight lines, and we want to have the city line, and we want to have that, and so. We wanted to keep it in that left field area, and you got the foul pole there, so we already had the structure built that same way, and there's an intention to it, right? We wanted to have a baseball section for line score and all that other stuff, and then we wanted to have a fun open section, and then the other part is just making, when you do it all together, it's fun. But yeah, we wanted to carve away a baseball nugget, and then we wanted to have another canvas for the production.
Gotcha. And we got to see that last night at the game. It was pretty cool seeing full live video almost the whole time on that upper section, and all the stats that you want. Like when you're looking to see, okay, what's the count, what's going on, you can see that in one spot. You don't have to search for it, right?
Yeah.
You know it's there.
And I will tell you that the game has changed, right? So technology has changed with it. So like out of town scoreboards were one of those things that everybody wanted. It was something that they built out of town scoreboards just for that. Mm-hmm. And now everyone just looks at their phone, right? So it's not, we still offer it, but it's not the like, we need it, right? It's like, I got it on my phone now, so what else can you give me, right? Like, show me the launch speed, show me this angle, show me that. And there's so many little unique things that even the casual baseball fan go, wow, he hit that out at 107 miles an hour. Like, I don't even know if they know what that means, but it's still cool.
That was me last night. Yeah,
exactly.
We were talking about how incredible it was, because I mean, I watch baseball occasionally. I'm not a huge baseball, but live baseball is always different too. I think that's almost the same for almost every sport, but going to a park and watching it, and how you had the boards zoned out, which is what you're talking about, the top part of the tee being the kind of the live video and everything, but then that bottom part being the dedicated graphics. But then there was that spot for, it was like the pitch speed, pitch type.
Yeah.
The horizontal
difference. I didn't know those were stats.
Yeah, you're not going to ask us to explain that.
No.
But
it was crazy to me too. Like we were even commenting, all of us around here, when as soon as that would hit the catcher's mitt, that populated like instantly.
Yeah.
That may have some for another time, but I was just amazed at all these stats of the pitch and the hit, but then also how fast it got to the board.
Yeah, and we were laughing with each other, texting after a moment the other day, and I think a couple of games ago, where Javi Baez got hit by a pitch, and it actually registered the ball coming off him. There's a launch angle and a velocity of the ball, like I said, like 14 miles an hour off of him, and at an angle of 20 degrees, and it showed up on the board. It just that correct.
Yeah, but he made the comment to Justin last night. I'm like, wow, that left his bat 102 miles an hour. And he goes, is that good? I go, I don't know, but it makes me sound like a smarter baseball person having that.
It does start to, I mean, ever since we started, introducing that, and we've done a great job this year of even enhancing the display of it, it does kind of, it sort of dominates the way I watch a game now, too. Like after a ball's hit with, I almost immediately look to see how hard it was hit. Yeah, like, oh, okay, let's go into the warning track. That's not going on.
Yeah, but for baseball persons around me, they'll be like, what just happened? I'll be like, oh, it was a slider inside out. I can actually see the pitch type on there right away, so I can say it back.
Yeah, that was nice to see.
That's part of the program of that board, though. It's so ginormous, right? It's so big that it just enhances everything. You can't unsee things, right? So, for instance, the other day, Alex was in the office working on something, and he was watching the broadcast, and Jason Benetti said, I just need an out counter because he missed the out. So we did a full board, Benetti, out counter. And he just had it tickled him so much, and it tickled. But that's the fun of what we try to do, right? So not only are you offering the numbers, you're offering it in a fun way. Yeah. So the way we do our brushback stats, the way we offer things, again, it's in that gaming environment. So it feels like, you're in Detroit, and it's a fun thing to immerse yourself in. And then we try to really immerse ourselves with a lot of Easter eggs and fun things, and nuggets of information that the fan will be like, oh, this is his walk-up song for this reason or
the
whatever.
walk-up song, yeah.
Those are the fun things, again, to really humanize the players. But like the Easter eggs are what I like, right, the most. So when people don't expect it, so you go from a still shot and then the guy goes like this and he goes back and people wonder like, how did that happen? How did you do that? Right? That's the fun part.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you've been talking about the main display and incorporating all these different stats, but there's also 2 different ribbon displays installed, a ribbon below the main display, and a couple of dugout displays. So kind of how do you incorporate that with the fan experience? Or what was the thought when you're thinking, hey, we want to add these pieces of technology to it?
The upper displays did replace displays that were previous in that location, but much better resolution. So we were actually able to kind of add statistical information in there that we couldn't previously display simply because of the resolution. And the resolution that we added in those 2 spots matches what we have on the board, 10 millimeter. And so been very happy with that. And also our ability to tie them all together was integral to the system too. And then with the dugout displays, I will say, with Pete and his group, they've been real aggressive on not, it's not simply, just a means for advertising, although that's obviously a big function of them league wide, but it is really tied into our game flow. And especially, after big moments, home runs, strikeouts, you see the animation on the ribbons as well too. And I think, it's kind of a connection to the dugout and the players and the, personnel on the field for us.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say programming wise, I think we're day one. It's a different approach in baseball because most of the advertisements and most of the structures are behind you, right? Whereas in the arena, you could look across and see it. Yeah. So it's more impactful for the presentation, but we're starting to lean into how do we enhance it, right? So for when it is good, when it is dark, it really enhances everything. But overall, even for the way we present our features with our sponsors or whatever, or our headshots and all, it's an immersive thing. And that's really what my goal is to make it immersive and to invite the fans. It's funny. I think we've kind of put the commonality of what we do called game presentation. And I know this sounds like a cliche and a little corny, but to me, it's game invitation, right? Like I don't want to present a show to you. I want you to be part of it. I want you to feel like you're part of the Tigers or the Red Wings. I want you to feel like you're involved, like you're part of the participation, because I know from my career that energy does beget energy, and that will lead to success. And so if you have a good team and you flower that energy, you're going to be more successful. I've got 5 championship rings in my life. So I've done this study and I'm like, I think this works, right? And so I lean into it. And for me as a fan, like how sports is integrated in my life and how it's been important in my life, I try to harness that. So it's not just, hey, you're coming out to a baseball game. I'm thinking about you're coming out to a baseball game with your dad or your wife or your son, your daughter, whatever it is. And that's a memory for you. So I hold that close to my heart. And I know it sounds cliched, but it's the truth. Like because I sat there with my dad and he taught me how to keep score. And those are memories that are huge for me. So I try to impart that and, be a part of somebody's story in some way.
That definitely came through last night. This made me think of it. There's different things that happen with like the live camera on the crowd, right? So it was the different face filters that were going on, different people interviewing everyone, or even the weird snack words thing. But we can get into that later. But there was a little girl last night that was crying. She was just turned 2 or whatever. They split screen to put someone next to the crying girl, and then the mom mouthed, "It's her birthday," and everyone started cheering. And it would just cut back to her every now and then, and she would keep crying. But then you could see the mom mouth, "It's her birthday. She turned 2," and the whole place just erupted and cheered. And the dad and her were laughing, and then ended up bringing her up a signed baseball at the end and stuff. So we think of memories. It was like, I have a memory even of that kid of all that going on, because it was just funny how they did all that. It was really cool.
It's fun. I'm glad you brought that up because that's I remember that moment last night, and we were talking about it because it was funny, right? Fans were laughing at the kid crying. But I was like, we got to do something for these kids. Poor kids crying every time we put them up. So Travis reached out to Cassidy on our promotions side and said, let's get this kid something, as a birthday gift. Yeah. And then it went down. And again, we enhance it with our baseball PA announcer going, now remember, happy birthday, and remember, there's no crying in baseball, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of puts a bow on it all. People go, that was great.
It's all organic too.
Yeah,
That's
and
what's
it's
awesome.
100%
So you can tell
organic.
everyone's on the same page here for
Yeah.
what you're looking for because you don't plan on something.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
that's a philosophy, right? That's taking the fan journey as the goal, right? It's different than a broadcast, what we do
Yes.
in-house. We're telling the story of the fan. The broadcast is telling the story of the game. We really want to enhance the fan experience, and those are the things that I hold dear. I love those moments.
Yeah, they're going to remember that experience forever, and getting the ball is like the cherry on top.
Yeah,
So
You
it's
come
like-
back for a birthday every year now, maybe you'll say.
yeah, right. And of course, the crowd went wild again when they presented the baseball. And that was really,
but you hit
really
on
cool.
a good point that the more you do to ingratiate yourself with the fans, even the young fans, because baseball is an acquired taste nowadays, right? So get the youth out there, show them the nuance of the game, show them the wonderful nature of this game.
It can be fun.
and show them how much fun you can have.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
It was like a slight, I wouldn't say minor league baseball feel, but it had that because you had a lot of fan engagement things last night, whether it was a lot of crowd cams or a lot of interviewing people for follow the hat or trivia and stuff like that. So it definitely had that crowd interaction feel.
And
to
it's
it.
funny you say that because sometimes you'll get some criticism from the purists of baseball fans, and they'll say that's minor league, right? To me, minor league is a way of saying that's fun.
Yeah,
right?
that's what everyone thinks
That's
of when they think
fun,
of minor
right?
league.
That's a Savannah Banana thought, right? And you know what? Major League Baseball should do more of that, in my opinion, right? I love. It's a great game. Why not have fun with the game?
So if they say it's minor league, it's a compliment.
Yes.
It's like, yes, that means it was fun. Great.
To me, anyway.
I've said that before.
And you said it's a game invitation to them, and obviously some of that experience starts when they arrive at the ballpark.
Yeah.
And you've integrated displays outside the ballpark too, as those entrance displays. What do you kind of do with those to bring people in?
Yeah, it certainly adds a life to it. I mean, number one, certainly as an organization, it's a promotional opportunity. I mean, there's no getting around that. So we do have agreements with sponsorship that takes up a good portion of the content, but we also use it as a means to provide information to fans as they're coming into the ballpark. And it's really kind of a canvas that's available to us. I think that probably bears a little bit more more in-depth exploration on that one. I think we've used it, gotten off to a good start with it, but still a little new concept to us.
Yeah, I would say those outside displays is twofold. Again, it's obviously for advertisement, and but it's also for promotion of our buildings and things like that. But we also there's an excitement to it. It's like a Vegas feel, right? It's just and everything that we do with the Illich company, really, everything we do is really focused on entertainment, making people happy, right? Even pizza, if you think about it, right? Like, does anyone ever open a pizza box and go, oh, it's pizza? Right? Everyone opens a pizza box like, hey, it's pizza. Right? No one's ever upset with a pizza box in front of them. So we really put a value on that, and the Illich family has always put a value on the entertainment of Detroit. And Detroit in itself, with Motown and all that, I think it's the second most theater seats or the first most theater seats in the world. Oh wow! And if you walk around, we're sitting right now. We could point to so many theaters. There's a theater there. There's a theater over there. There's one over there. And this is a theater, right? So Detroit is very entertainment focused, and the more you can enhance that as you're walking in, the bells and whistles and the excitement, the lights, the smells, it just enhances the experience for the fan.
Yeah. And I'd say the technology component of that, whether it's the gate displays or the interior displays, for us, and this is kind of going back to it's minor league, and 100% that means it's fun. But the part that there's responsibility on our part on that is to make sure that it's presented in such a professional way that it achieves a mark that minor league teams can't do. Yeah. And I think, we do a terrific job of that. So all the games that you mentioned, we present in a way that's, national game show style quality to it. The graphics that are used, the technology involved, and just the smoothness of the operation, the professionalism of the host, all of these things, enhance it while also keeping in mind to be fun, interactive, and allow for great moments to happen and be responsive to them.
Yeah, and I didn't even notice this because this is my first time at Comerica Park too. You're talking about the entrance displays telling you what's going on, entertaining. I can see over your shoulder you got Def Leppard and Green Day coming. But when we were walking around with you yesterday, just there's a certain feel and almost architectural style of the park. But then didn't even realize, I didn't see it until the game walking around, that there's a carousel and a Ferris wheel too in different areas. So but that ties into all this too, right? The idea that you want it to be more, I would say, family friendly, but bring people in and do things outside of just what's in the baseball field. But like, I don't know if I've ever seen a Ferris wheel or carousel at a baseball stadium.
And that goes back to, our owner, Mike Illich, who passed away a few years ago, but was integral to the design of the ballpark. And those are touches that were just important to him.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that coming to a baseball game was a family event, and so to build off of that was his number one focus kind of coming into the park. And those were touches that, he insisted upon. And it's funny when you mention that because, I'm in my position now. I'm in, I have the opportunity to bring people around and show them the ballpark. And whenever I see it through a new set of eyes, I'm always reminded of like how unique it is. The fact that we have a carousel, that we have, a Ferris wheel, and so many touch points for fans. The amount of tigers that we have around the ballpark is an interesting feature. We have a lot of unique things here having with our ballpark. And then when you sit in your seats, you get to see the downtown, Detroit skyline that's still being built right now as we speak out there. And that's a pretty cool thing too.
Yeah, I would say that Comerica is a cathedral of baseball. It truly is. It's as you walk around. For me, again, when it's part of business too, right? So like there are times when you have bad days and you're just like, oh God, you get frustrated. I just walk out to the ballpark when I'm here and just sit in a seat and just look at the skyline and all that. And Detroit is a beautiful city, and when you see the baseball park in a city, it's something romantic about it, baseball, right? But that applies to at LCA, right? Like it's such an homage to Detroit, and it's such an homage to old school hockey and being an original six team. Just Detroit in itself is such a great fan base and such a deep hardcore love for the sports teams. And what's cool about it again is we're sitting here, and this is in the Tigers ballpark. I could throw a stone and hit the Lions Ford Field, and then I could walk a block and see the Pistons and the Red Wings. So it's a really cool sports town.
That's what I didn't realize either. We were talking about yesterday how close everything was. I know Justin is a big Lions fan, so he's gone to Lions games.
Yes, I am.
So you were a little more familiar with this area, but we were walking around being like, oh yeah, you can see Ford Field right outside the stadium there and stuff too. I had no idea it was that.
There's a pride to that, and I think a lot of that pride comes from the intuitive nature of the Illich family. Mike and Marianne, like they really kind of revitalized Detroit by moving Little Caesars downtown and creating this cathedral, and then creating that cathedral, and then working with the mayor and stuff to allow for the Lions to build right next door. I mean, that's something that, again, I'm not trying to sound like, I'm trying to kiss butt of the organization here, but what an inspiring story the Illich family is. Like truly an inspiring story. It's the American dream to its core. And luckily in my first week here, they did a documentary for Marianne Illich that we were all invited to. And I had known about the Illich family. We lost to the Red Wings in the Stanley Cup when I was with the Hurricanes. So I was aware of the Illich family and all that. But when we did the documentary and you really watched the development of the Little Caesars empire, essentially, what a wonderful story, and what a true American story. Really, really cool.
Yeah. What is that on? Is that on like Netflix or something?
I'm sure it's a very good question. I'm not sure yet.
I'll Google it. It really got me wanting to watch it.
It really is good. It's just the ingenuity of it is amazing. Really, truly is.
Yeah, and the result is we're in an environment where everybody's passionate about sports, cares about them. Even when the teams are down, there's still a lot of interest, and there's obviously the natural disappointment that kind of comes along with that, but then there's also just what's coming next and the feel, and the result to us is basically, you can call it pressure, call it whatever it is, but we feel that impact from the fans and need to respond to it. I need to deliver, and I think it's a cycle that works that way. But you feed off that energy and that interest. That people care, and that's an important part of what we do.
Yeah. And maybe speaking of, what's next, is there any future plans for, technology expansion at the ballpark, or anything that you're learning with the new displays this year that you're like, oh, we're going to implement this to make sure those fans get a new experience every time they come back?
Well, I'll start just kind of telling the program wise, and then I'll let Stan talk about phase 2 of what we're doing here. But we have a Ferrari body with a Toyota back, right? So the second part of this is going to be the control, which was what Stan will touch in. So we are maximizing our technology on the board this year to the point where every game is kind of a sweat fest of, are we going to get through this? But my point in saying this all is like we're dazzling fans. We're having a lot of fun with our fans, and we haven't even scratched the surface of technology. Stan?
This is true. So we, different ways that you can do it. You can do it all at once. Some teams do that. Control room, video board, all on one package. We elected to go in 2 phases with it and did the video board first, along with the content management system that allows us to do many of the things we've already kind of talked about today. But the next step is our control room. Our control room was upgraded back in 2012 also. So we have, in terms of, replay system, some graphics machines, some legacy equipment that it is time for a refresh. And for us too, we just need space. It was appropriate at the time for what was being designed, but the way we approach game entertainment now and the level that we're doing it, we need more space. And so we'll be moving, our servers, to another location, creating a data center, going to an all IP-based control room too, which is a big step, big learning curve for, all of us that are involved in the way we plan, enhancing our cameras, adding cameras to where we haven't had cameras before. You're really kind of linking all of the ballpark, together, being able to shoot in locations that we haven't been able to before. And I think, part of that too, that's, been crystallized this year is seeing the prominence of the video board again, the central role that it plays in people's enjoyment of the game, and saying, okay, this is a way we can tie in, the big cat court or other areas, of the ballpark to the rest of the fans that are in their seats, and really operate it kind of as one whole.
Yeah, I think that the goal is the fan experience, right? So to really truly have an immersive experience. So whatever that might be, and right now where it's the 3, 2, 1 experience, right? Which is a little different than hitting one button and everything goes and you're like, oh, what's going on here? Yeah. That's the immersion that I like, right? Because again, you don't buy a ticket to a game expecting a win. You buy a ticket to a game because you want to go out and have a good time, right? So if you're not going to win, if you're losing, you still want to have a good time. So that's when we shine, right? I think there was a different type of philosophy, at least on the Red Wings side before I got here, as we're the Red Wings, we don't get fun, but we went through some struggles, right? And I'm like, that's when we have to step up. That when the team is not doing well, we have to make it a fun experience. Yeah. And it's a tricky thing because everyone lives and dies by the games, right? So you don't want to, go too far where people, you annoy baseball operations or hockey operations, but you really truly want to bring that person back because they said, man, we lost 5-1, but boy, we had a good time, right? That's what it's about.
Yep. No, I agree. There's definitely, I'm a big Vikings fan, so sorry, but it was one of those, even growing up in bad years and stuff, it was exactly to your point where I was like, go with my dad or my mom, and it was like, I'm going to a Vikings game, and like you said, they buy that ticket knowing that you might not win, but they buy the ticket anyway. So if you start losing, they're not going to all of a sudden throw away the money that they bought on the ticket.
And then you invest in the players too. And you said sorry because you said you're a Viking. We're the ones to say sorry to you, right?
You guys did have a pretty
Don't
good
apologize for being on that team.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to apologize for that. So with all the experiences you've had, I was just kind of curious, do you look at, hey, other baseball teams are doing this or other hockey teams are doing this? Where do you get new ideas from to keep that exciting fan experience going?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because there's a lot of great ideation, great technology out there. I think the way I measure things is when I go see other shows and stuff, and I go, "Oh, wish I would have thought of that." That's how I go, and that's cool. And then I go, "I want to do that, but I got to do it in a different spin, right?" So I don't mind repeating. I mean, sometimes imitation's the highest form of flattery. But I want to make it fresh for our fans. Like features and stuff, you'll see some repetition between other shows and stuff like that. But really, it's the feel of everything and making it unique to your fan base, and this is an amazing fan base. Yeah,
it's you're in different markets, so you might have different fans showing up and maybe not seeing it other than online for the first time.
Right.
But then you put your own spin on it.
Yeah, and that, again, this is a fan base that I've never had a fan base like this, and that's not taking shots of any of the fan bases I've had in the past. The way I'd say every team I've been with has been kind of an emergent team or a new team or a non-traditional market team. Detroit is, the original 6 hockey team, 1901, the Tigers, Ty Cobb. You can't, so there's a different feel for me, and I kind of like that tradition. I love it. And for the Red Wings side, there's a villainy to it, right? Like people hate the Red Wings because we've been so good, and I kind of like that. I've always liked the villains in wrestling and Darth Vader and all that stuff. So I kind of like that because you can play up on that, and there's a different type of nationalism or civic pride to being good too, and having a past. So it's a different feel for me, but I love it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned benchmarking with the other teams, and that is an important part of what we do. I'm sure my counterparts, especially on the MLB side, you'll probably see my email pop up and I went, okay, what's Stan asking about now? Because I do reach out a lot. It's just how can you deny the opportunity to talk to others that are in a very similar position as yourself and are experiencing these things. So certainly on the tech side, constantly asking questions. Okay, we're going to 2110 next year for our control room. What will that actually end up? What kind of impact will that be? And you have to reach outside of sports too, to find a lot of these answers. And so it's an important part of what we do.
But to answer that one further is to be on the blazing edge of technology is something that I love, right? It's harder to do like in other sports, like the NFL. The NFL is more laid back and wants to see success in other leagues. MLB and NHL really are emergent kind of sport minds, right? They want to be on the cutting edge of technology, and that's a nice marriage, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Well, is there anything you would think of? I mean, we've talked about, getting inspiration from either going to sites and seeing different things or just, we call it an industry curse sometimes. When I first started Daktronics, we thought it was just the Daktronics curse, where if you're going for something for personal reasons, you can't look at it the same way you used to. If the example is go to Target Center to see a Timberwolves game and I'm with friends and I'm like, is that a 4mm? And I talk about that stuff out loud and they tell me to shut up. So it doesn't matter. Do you guys kind of have that too? The more we've done the podcast over the last 5-6 years, we hear that's not just a Daktronics thing, but when you're in the industry and say you just go to another game and you're watching stuff on the board or on TV, are you constantly you're not able to shut it off, get ideas, take pictures?
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it goes?
Do I think, yes, would I rephrase that trivia question that I just saw? Yes, I do think that occasionally when I'm at another ballpark or another venue. You're right. The same mix happens. You get inspired by some things you see. There's definitely, a moment or two where you're like, I wish I would have thought that. You give credit where credit is due. Yep. Other moments where, okay, we could do that, but I think we could do that better. Yeah. And we know a way to improve upon that. So, you take it all in, and then definitely on the tech side of things, you're constantly asking questions. Just so you're really what is the pitch on that board? Why that placement? What are the
it's
benefits?
It's like a lens you
there,
can't take off.
Exactly.
It's like what you have it on. But.
Again, on the other side of on the creative side of this, I think as you age in the business too, you have to evolve too. Like I always say that the longer you go in the business and the older you get in the business, there's two ways you can go. You could either be a dinosaur or you could be a primate, right? And dinosaurs go extinct and primates evolve. And so what that means to me is listening to the team I'm around, the young folks, the different voices, and trying things that necessarily wouldn't work for me, right? Like, things that will fire me up won't fire up a 20-year-old today, right? So I have to listen and I have to be able to try and really try to evolve and really kind of listen to the young folks and really explore their ideas. And to me, as I ascended in the business and I went from, an editor to a producer and all that, and having to relinquish some of those creativities, now my joy is collaboration, right? And collaboration and ascension, right? I really truly love hearing ideas and like having a piece from this guy's idea or this girl's idea and then kind of weaving it together so everyone has an ownership in it and seeing the looks on our team's faces and then knowing that that's going to translate to the fans. So I know it sounds all romanticized and all, but it's the truth of it, right? Like you have to evolve. You have to understand. And again, now I hear in my 50s, I can't be like, I don't get that song. Let's not play it. Like I go, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot. And then you go, hey, it worked, And so there's a it's a dance of like, because you can make a mistake. But again, with baseball, it's great. And because you got 81 games, right? You can make a mistake in baseball. You can try things in baseball on a Monday night versus Milwaukee, right? Or whatever. But in football, you got 10 games, right? You can't even have a bad quarter, let alone a game. So.
Yeah, maybe kind of along those lines. If there's you're in the middle of you're done with phase one and head into phase two, kind of in the middle of a technology upgrade there. If you had advice to give to somebody else who's looking to implement new things to their ballparks, whether it's technology or different kinds of graphics and interaction stuff. Well, what would you give them as advice? We'll start with Stan.
I would say don't make research just a one-time thing, but just kind of part of your regular day in and day out responsibilities. Stay abreast of what's going on in the technological world, so that it doesn't feel like you're cramming for a test. And so just make it part of your life. I think is a big thing. And that includes reaching out to your counterparts and doing your due diligence. And then it's just think big and be in sync with all the parties that are going to be impacted. From us, we established a group right on that touched on ballpark operations, along with game presentation, along with our sponsorship group, and everybody had a seat at the table and was aware of the decisions we're making. And we established early on too what our priorities were, and the number one priority was game presentation and how it's going to impact the fans, and then you build from there.
Yeah, and I would say again to kind of iterate what Stan said is, and the old the adage, dream big, dare to fail, right? Like, we're not curing COVID here. We're having fun. We're entertaining people. So lean into that part of it, right? And the advice I would give is find partners too. Like, take a chance. Like, don't just go with tried and true like this technology, because that technology, there might be an emergent technology that you should keep an eye on before you make that decision to go with this technology. And since we're talking about Daktronics, I can remember being in San Diego in the 90s at an idea conference, and somebody had a display, a video display for, I think it was the Trailblazers, had a video display on the court.
Okay.
And I remember Daktronics always had a big contingency, and I was sitting back with the Daktronics guys, and I heard Dan Kipley at the time talking, this is really cool. And just the idea of how do we kind of take this technology and expand it. And again, it's that same idea, that same principle of, that's a cool idea. How do I make it even better, right?
Yeah.
So using Daktronics as an example, like, we used to make squares, right? I remember when I was in Carolina, when we first put our control room in, and it was Sony Jumbotron. And it was literally 2 weeks later, I got an email or a letter, no emails, a letter that said, hey, Sony's no longer in the Jumbotron business. If you guys want to stockpile parts. And I was like, what? So again, that was Sony was the standard. And then Sony was like, nope, we had upstarts like Daktronics that were really diving into research and development. And those are the partners that I look for, right? A partner that's not just going to do a service for me, but we're going to get together on the same page, and we're going to push that forward, right? We're going to have some fun with technology, right? Yep. We're gonna test things, and that's when I get into a partnership with someone like Daktronics or a Q Audio or things like that for a different type of interaction through the phone. But like with Daktronics, I remember talking to Brent Stevens, saying, I want to do this, that, and like that ideation and him bringing that back and then seeing it happen. That's the partners I look for. So again, the final piece of advice is find the partners and dance together.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that too. Then maybe like working with Daktronics and stuff like that, we're kind of curious too. I know we didn't mean to plug it, but it was just kind of what has it been like working with Daktronics then too? Has it been through this whole upgrade process from, everything from installation kind of all the way through to where it's at today?
I think on our side in the process that we went through, I would say early on, the biggest benefit is just the wealth of experience that Daktronics brings. It's more than half of MLB boards. That's a pretty big starting point, right? And their quantification of even non-Daktronics boards and being able to understand, okay, what's in each facility, and being able to bring that, that knowledge to the table right away. We're not having to reach out to every team and get some spec. So there's some things that Daktronics is able to help with, along the line early in the process. Then as you get into it, and we ultimately made our choice. Definitely a true partnership and flexibility in our schedule. Baseball, hey, we have a short off season, but kind of like other teams, but our off season also involves several months of snow and horrible weather that you now have to construct into, and you have to show some flexibility within that too, and that just the open lines of communication that happen throughout the process were very good.
Yeah, and I think for me, like Daktronics, outside the research and development, which is something that I always appreciate. When I see a company that's trying to do the next thing, that's the company I want to work with. So that's the truism. Yeah. But I would also say, and I take this as a compliment, I would say Daktronics is like the Dunder Mifflin of it's customer service. It truly is. And I've become friends with people that I've worked with at Daktronics, like lifelong friends, like Brent Stevens, who used to be with Daktronics. I'm still friends with these people because it's a relationship, and it's that dance, right? Like, I want to do the coolest show I can here, and I need cool partners to make that happen. And the customer service with Daktronics is always like, hey, we got a note out or whatever. Immediate attention to it, and that's something that I truly appreciate. Awesome.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I know this is on a morning right before you've got a game coming up, so we appreciate you taking the time. It's been great to hear your stories. You've got a great fan experience that we got to experience last night and a win. So Stan and Pete, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks.